area of study. We'll start with you, Chloe.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me to take part today. So I'm currently the National Forum Student Associate. I've been with the Forum since last September, and I'll be finishing up this summer. But I previously studied in IADT in Dún Laoghaire. I did my undergrad degree there, starting 2014 in English Media and Cultural Studies. And then I, in fourth year, was I ran to be their SU president. So that was what I did for a year after I finished. And then after that, I immediately went to UCD to do a master's in literature and culture. So I finished that last year, partly online. Well, part of the year was spent online. The first half of the year was in UCD, but so I've had a bit of the COVID experience as well. And then I started working with the Forum, and as of yesterday, I was accepted to do my PhD in UCD. So that's where I'll be off to next. So
congratulations. That's great news. Thank you, Chloe. Mairead, would you like to follow on?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having us all here this afternoon. So I am the Student Associate for Mary Immaculate College, and it's been a part-time role for me since September. But I'm a final year student of the B.Ed in Education and Psychology, and as of yesterday I have my last assignment finished, so I'm nearly a qualified primary school teacher, which is very exciting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the session. I've been involved with Students' Union through the class rep system that we have in Mary I, but this year was really exciting to be involved on a national forum and to get involved on an institutional level as well.
Thank you, Mairead, and congratulations as well. Niamh, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Niamh Kennedy, and I am a PhD researcher in the School of Law in the University of Limerick, and also the National Forum one of the National Forum Student Associates for the University of Limerick. I'm in my 7th consecutive year in UL, so my background would have been an undergraduate in Law Plus, and then a master's degree in Human Rights and Criminal Justice. So I have no exams or nothing to celebrate this semester anyway, but hopefully next year. But congratulations, Mairead and Chloe. You have some very exciting times ahead of you, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion later on today.
Thank you, Niamh. As they say, no news is good news. So
absolutely.
Celebrate that. Okay, and Dylan?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Dylan. I'm a PhD researcher in the PES here in UL, and yet one of the National Forum Student Associates. My background, I did 4 years in WIT, then I did a master's over in England, and now just finishing the PhD just very recently. So 9 years of being a student is coming to an end, unfortunately. But yeah, looking forward to discussions and seeing how we can contribute to this session.
Thank you all to the panel. So I'll go to the first question. The conference theme is celebrating innovation, opportunities, and inspirations in learning and teaching. Your role with the National Forum is one aspect of that innovation and opportunity for students. Would you like to share with us your experience of being in that role and any impact this has had on you as a student? So Chloe, would you like to start?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I suppose I have the unique experience of having been the only full-time person with the Forum in terms of the Student Associates this year. So it's kind of you're almost on both sides. You're kind of with the student feedback kind of end, but also in the kind of organizational end of the Student Associate Assembly, which everybody here sits on. But I suppose for me, it's been an opportunity to sort of realize how much innovation is going on in the background that you're sort of unaware of as a student. I think I can see everybody nodding that that's kind of a universal experience for all of us, that when you're a student, you don't often get to see how much effort is being put in the background by your lecturers, by the staff, and how much is going towards your personal success as a student. And I work as part of the Forum, kind of works in terms of little triads. So I work as part of the student success triad. So we've done things like the student assembly, which has brought together students from I think 32 HEAs in Ireland, which has been you know, such a wonderful opportunity to be able to get such a broad remit of feedback from students and to have that kind of input, because I think that was something that the forum learned, that having one student intern, or I think last year they had maybe 2 part-time student interns, just simply wasn't enough, because I am not a universal example of the student experience. Like, all of us here would have a completely unique experience, and that's the same for every student. But it's certainly been wonderful in terms of that regard, and I think it's probably something that everybody else can talk about, that it's really given an insight into the breadth of the kind of innovation and, you know, progression in terms of teaching and learning that's kind of happening in Ireland and throughout Ireland. And I think, you know, one of the things that I did through my role was I did a digital badge in Universal Design for Learning, which was something that I genuinely did not know about before I, you know, started with the forum. But it was something that just spoke to me in terms of, this is genuinely great. How did I not know about this? But I suppose that's we're students, we have extreme tunnel vision in terms of what's going on in our lives. But that was really beneficial, and just to see the kind of things that are going on in the background of all of this effort is being put in, and then obviously the huge effort that has been going in over the past year in terms of, quite literally overnight, everything was shifted to an entirely different way of teaching, because, you know, things couldn't just be adapted from what we do in the classroom to what we do online. And it's the same for this. You know, this conference would probably look entirely different if it was to be in person. But that's my experience, is that it's been incredibly eye-opening, to be completely honest about it.
That's great. Thank you, Chloe. Mairead?
Yes, so like Chloe was saying, I think one of the biggest things I've taken from this is just meeting so many people from different educational backgrounds. Because one of the strengths of the Assembly is that it's not only universities that are represented, but there's smaller colleges, there's ITs, and there's other further education institutions as well. So that's been really beneficial. I think in terms of the impact it's had on me as a student, I really admire the philosophy of the Assembly, because I know there's so many decisions being made that affect young people and that affect students, and they aren't always involved and their voice isn't always heard. But it's really something empowering that the National Forum is pursuing, that at the decision-making table there will be a student voice. And I think as well, as a student teacher, it's definitely something I will bring into my own teaching now that maybe I wouldn't have thought about as much, in terms of like bringing the children into, you know, deciding what the curriculum would look like or deciding what the lessons will look like. So it's definitely had an impact on me in that sense. As well, one of the main things we were involved with this year was promoting the Teaching Hero Awards, which I'm sure some of the attendees are familiar with, and maybe they're heroes themselves. So basically that was a student-led award system, and there were lecturers and tutors and teachers all around Ireland who were nominated for the award by their own students, and that came to a culmination at the end of April with the award ceremony in online as well, obviously, of course. But yeah, it was just wonderful seeing that, and I think it was inspiring for lecturers as well, because it was student-led, and I think it meant a lot to people. So yeah, it was great being involved in that, and just the diversity of experience for me and the diversity of the associates was something I took from it as well.
That's great, thank you, Mairead. Niamh?
Yeah, so out of fear of repeating what both Chloe and Mairead have said, but definitely the fact that the student associates kind of give more of a national perspective on students, and as Mairead said, from both universities and smaller colleges. And I know every college typically has their students' union representing their own institution, but this whole initiative has been fantastic because it kind of gives a more lateral view and of all the colleges in Ireland as a whole. So it's been definitely a fantastic opportunity, especially in the last year, more so than ever, to make sure that the students' voice is heard. Is important, and we have a lot to say, especially because this year has been so stressful. It's been full of new experiences for both students and for educators alike. So it was really, really important for the forum that the students' voice wouldn't kind of get lost or muffled out amongst all the chaos and the change. For me personally, it really opened my eyes to the fact that education and being a student isn't a one-size-fits-all affair. Every student faces different challenges and struggles, but they also thrive in different environments. So it was lovely to be a part of a huge collection of students and student associates who can share their experiences and speak on behalf of their own institutions. So some of the examples were kind of that one student might love this new online remote asynchronous method of teaching, and don't really enjoying continuous assessments, whereas other students might struggle to learn in this way and would prefer to go back to the face-to-face contact and maybe end of term exams and things like that. So it has really been a really eye-opening experience for me personally, because I'm a postgraduate researcher, so I don't actually have any classes or any assessments, but it's really allowed me to empathise with my student body in my own institution and other institutions across Ireland. It kind of draw my attention to the fact that regardless of whether we're in class and online, the overall objective is teaching and learning, so that we should be able to do so in a way that has that at the absolute heart and the centre of everything that we do, and to encourage our educators to be able to empathise with their students who may be really struggling over the last couple of months, who mightn't have a quiet space to listen to their online lectures, or to complete their assignments. They could be sharing their space with a housemate, or maybe siblings who are being homeschooled, or a myriad of different scenarios. So definitely for me, I have at one stage fit into each of those categories. So it's been really, really beneficial for me, because as a student, I know that I'm not alone, that we're all in this together, and that we're going to get through it eventually.
That's great. Thanks, Niamh. And Dylan?
Great. I'm not sure what else I can add here, and I echo all Chloe, Mairead's and Niamh's comments there. I suppose it's important to note that student voice was always there, but what the National Forum have given now is given a formal framework to listen, not only listen, but also hear the student voice. And I think it's really important that sometimes students are treated as tokenistic, where we listen to the student voice and push them on the side and one student at the meeting, but now the National Forum Student Assembly is actually hearing our voice, and we can start to see this change happening where, for example, this conference where we have a student presentation now, we're starting to see more. And I think that student assembly is really pushing the boundaries of what it means to engage students and work in that partnership approach. So I think not only personally, but for the whole student body, what the National Forum and the Student Assembly in particular have done is included us as students in the conversation, which we should have been included in from the start. But look, we're here now.
Thanks, Dylan. Well, it's great from what I can hear from all of you that obviously it's so great to have the student voice, but it seems like maybe you got more out of it than maybe you were expecting. You know, like that you're obviously your voice is being heard, but you're equally getting insights out of it for your own self. Like Chloe, you mentioned the UDL. And Mairead, you mentioned what you'll bring to your teaching as well. So just kind of echoing what you were saying, Niamh, in terms of that empathy, it's about the teaching and learning. You know, it's about supporting the students. Ultimately, we as educators and teachers, we're there for the students. We're guiding them. You know, we can't learn things for individuals. We're there to support. So where do you see the opportunity for students to influence and inspire learning and teaching? I can go in order if you'd like, or if somebody wants to take that one.
Yeah, I don't mind popping on. Oh, sorry, Dylan, do you want to go ahead? So definitely, well, in my opinion anyway, student collaboration, engagement and partnership is really important. And as you so simply put it, you're as educators, your job is to guide and how best to know how well your class will absorb your information and really understand the material of the module if you don't ask them. And as I mentioned, like previously, it's not a one size fits all. Different students have different learning types. They might benefit from different methods of teaching and so on, be it learning activities, continuous assessments, maybe more time to complete their assignments, or just being comfortable enough to say, look, I have 3 other assignments due this week. Would you mind if we adjusted our time frame a little bit, maybe had it a week earlier, a week later, just so that it gives students the opportunity to put as much effort and work into it and really demonstrate what they know, how much they've learned, and that they're able to complete this this assignment efficiently and in the best light. Especially the last year, we've seen a lot of new different types of teaching methods. Well, they have been there, but they haven't been utilised as much as they have been in the last year. And there's definitely some things that we will be able to take forward in a hopefully soon post-COVID teaching and learning environment. But again, it's just to give students the confidence to take a firm stance and kind of take ownership in their education and be open to conversations with those who are teaching them about how they'll most benefit from their classes and their mode of study. We put enough money and years of our lives into getting our education, and so I definitely think we should have a say in how we are educated, and be comfortable and open to having a conversation with those that are educating us on how best we think that would be.
Thanks, Niamh.
I can jump in there just to follow on from Niamh. Yeah, thanks Niamh. I completely agree with you around and where do you see the opportunity? I suppose I see the opportunity everywhere. It's where don't I see the opportunity for students to engage and influence. I think there needs to be structures in place though for that formal engagement. So I also work with the National Student Engagement Programme, and we do a lot of work on this, on how students can get engaged and work in that partnership approach. So there's a lot of responsibility on the student themselves to take that step, and on the teachers or the lecturers, whatever term you want to use, to take that step as well. There's an onus there. Partnership is not just one-sided. And I'm obviously heavily influenced by Mary Fitzpatrick, who's here, I know, and Mary would always say, ask your students, how do you want to learn? So asking your students, how do you want to learn? So you're taking that first step, and then the students can take the step as well. So as I said, partnership is not one side. It usually starts with a simple question, starts with a first step, and that's where we can give students the opportunities, and also students can take hold of those opportunities.
That's great. Yeah, go ahead, Chloe.
Yeah, no, I think I might just come in there because, it's really, just kind of chiming off of what both Dylan and Niamh have said. And it is kind of a case of, there are opportunities for students to kind of influence and, change things everywhere. But it is kind of asking them, how do you want to learn? But also, how do you want to contribute to this? How do you want to be a partner in this? Because the onus is often put on the student in terms of like, it's not often that, I don't want to say the wrong word, but it's not often the most friendly way in terms of just sending out a survey or anything to try and get input. I think that's something that we've really seen this year, particularly with, I was part of an adjudication panel for an awards thing, which Mary and Annie may be familiar with on Monday. But one of the things that I noticed from that was the people who had put themselves forward for it, much like the teaching heroes from the National Forum, were really engaging with students in terms of asking, on a kind of weekly basis in class, how are things going? And it is kind of taking what we've learned from this year and kind of putting that into processes and, like as Dylan said, proper like structures and everything going forward, because there is a sense of we've really hit on a moment of sort of empathy and everything, and it is really important to bring that forward into how we take on feedback and how we use the kind of student voice and how we use their influence in how we do everything effectively, because there's nothing really in institutions that students can't give input in, bar maybe, I don't know, finances or something like that. But apart from that, students always have something to say about everything. But I think that there is a way in terms of going forward with what we have learned and how we engage students and how we have conversations with students. It is as simple as asking, how are you finding this? And I think that's something that works really well. And then using that and putting a structure on it, like Dylan said, like having advisory groups, having focus groups, having things like the student assembly, where you take the kind of really organic, having a genuine conversation and put that into some kind of formal structure that allows you to take really constructive feedback and really good influence and input from the students, because they're the people at the receiving end of the learning and of the teaching, so they have a lot to say. And as has been said by everybody, there's an awful lot of diversity in students and everything, and everyone has a kind of unique experience and a unique kind of input to give, which I think we have seen in terms of the projects I've worked on with the forum you know, from everything to SATL funded projects to the Student Assembly to Teaching Heroes, Student Success Framework, that the student input, there's always something that is said that you take away and go, oh my God, I never even thought of that. And I mean, I am a student, but I'm only one student.
No, very good. Marie, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I'll just echo what everyone else said. I think the opportunity lies everywhere. Every aspect of teaching and learning has a potential to be influenced by the student voice. And I think I'd just say as well, in terms of individual modules, I know gathering feedback is great, but when it's left till the end of the module, it's not necessarily beneficial for the students who are taking the module, or even if it's just at the beginning. I think feedback and student voice is something that has to be present throughout the semester and the academic year. I'll say as well, surveys and everything are great and they definitely contribute to teaching and learning, but like that, it's about asking the questions and just developing relationships, and it can be something as simple as, oh, how did that lecture go? And you might get some feedback that you never considered before, but that's it. It's just a continuous process, whether it's formal or informal, and I think, yeah, students really, it's every aspect of teaching and learning that students can contribute to.
Thanks. So I know that I sent you questions, and we kind of prepared a guide for a plan. But as we know with plans, I feel like the next question that would really kind of take this conversation to a close is the one there that said, what do you think is the most effective approach for student input into teaching and learning? Like you have all said, that basically this opportunity is the interaction of the student, is the partnership. So I guess, and I'll let whoever would like to go first, in no particular order, but like, what do you think is the most effective approach for student feedback?
Yeah, I don't mind going first, if that's okay. During my my master's degree, we actually had a really helpful, it's kind of like almost a discussion group. So our course director sent out an invitation just asking, was anyone free to meet? And normally about 20 students replied back in each of the semesters. Saying they're available, and we had our little coffee morning, and we really just sat around with our course director and spoke about the well-doings and the woes of our course and the different modules, our relationship with our lecturers and our educators, what we enjoy, what we think might benefit from some change or maybe a little revision, and things like that. And it was really beneficial for students because we knew like our information was not going to get lost or misconstrued between me and my course director. I knew he was listening to us, and he was taking notes, and he was very passionate about his course, and it was evident from organising such a discussion group. And we obviously had just spoken about kind of surveys and feedback, and sometimes they're not the best because it's a large portion of information and trying to collate it and I suppose design a way forward from it. But a conversation was really the best way forward. For obviously larger groups, this might not always be the most appropriate way forward. So as a previous class rep during my undergraduate degree, that was always also a fantastic opportunity as well, because some students might have the confidence to speak to the person who's leading your module or your course and say, I'm not responding well to this, or this should be done a different way. Especially as a new college student, it can be a very daunting experience. So utilising class reps and approaching them with feedback and trusting that your class rep will represent you as best as they can and bring these queries and concerns to the educator is also another popular and beneficial way of getting feedback to our educators and our course directors and module leaders and so on, and knowing that the conversation is being had and that students' voices are being heard, and hopefully that action will be taken to improve the overall experience for students.
Thanks, Eve. Would anybody else like to add something?
Yeah, I can. Oh, go on, Marie. Do you want to go, Marie? Okay, go on. I was following for Neve there. Maybe think about, in my other hat, I also teach at the university on the undergrad and postgrad courses in PES. And one way that I get the students' input into the teaching and learning experience is in that first class with them, where, again, influenced by Mary Fitzpatrick, I think a lot of my teaching is influenced by Mary. She always talks about starting a learning contract. So I started a learning contract with them where they ask the students, okay, these are my expectations. What's your expectations? How do you want to learn? So we talk about that and we start a good dialogue between each, and then we get into the assessment. Okay, let's co-construct the rubric. This is what the assessment's going to be like. Let's co-construct the rubric. And we do that in the first class. So from the very first class, that barrier, that imaginary barrier between student and teacher is broken. And that's getting students into the teaching and learning experience. And that will set the scene then for the rest of the module and the rest of the semester. So it's a really good way of breaking down those walls and then starting that dialogue and blending the teacher and learner role, which I think is super important. So that's one way I do it from my own experience in my teacher hat. And I know as a student, when that happened to me, I really appreciate it as well. Be nice maybe go to Mairead now, who is a student at this time, so to hear her point of view.
Thanks, Dylan. So yeah, in terms of what's the most effective approach, I think ultimately students need to be there at the decision-making table, and I think those hierarchies do need to be broken down a bit, because you can gather the feedback, you can get everyone's opinions, but at the end of the day, if a student isn't there when the big decisions are being made, there's still that sort of power imbalance. And so I definitely think whether it's a big decision being made on a whole institution level, or if it's a decision being made about a particular module, a student should have a say, whether that's through the students' union or the student associate, or maybe a student who's taking the module. And ultimately, yeah, once that sort of hierarchy is broken down and the students are directly involved, I think that's when all of the student voice will be most effective.
I think I'd just probably like to echo that I think that's, what Mairead said really sums it up, that it is kind of sometimes viewed a little bit like an us and them kind of thing, of there's the students over here and there's the staff over here, but really teaching and learning is a circle. That, one of the things that I learned last year while we moved online during my master's was that our lecturers were really honest that they were learning this as much as we were, and we were at times, students were teaching lecturers how to use a certain thing, or everybody was kind of almost brought to a level playing field almost. And there's something about that really broke down that kind of hierarchy that Mairead is talking about. And I think that's a really good place to start, that, students should always be at the table, should always be invited. And I think that's one thing that students are always willing, there will always be at least one student willing to engage with something, whether it's being asked to sit on a committee, on a talk like this, and to give their input. And I think that's a great place to start, is kind of, realizing that if we're going to be talking about teaching and learning, that there should always be people who teach and there should always be people who learn at the exact same table.
That's great. Those are all really useful approaches. So just to close off the loop, I think from the, I guess, looking at it from the student's perspective, so you as an experienced student working with the National Forum, having considered all of these different approaches and opportunities for students to engage and provide input, what advice would you give to a new first-year student starting college, going to university for the first time, that maybe to provide them advice of how could they get involved?
I think as I'm at the end of my 4 years, if I were to say one thing to a first-year student, it would be to focus on building relationships, whether that's with your classmates or even with your lecturers or your teachers, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I have my degree now, I have my knowledge, but the biggest thing I'm taking from MIC is the people I've met. Just on a personal level, they've helped me grow, and on a professional level as well. Now that I'm going into the world of work, we'll all be helping each other with interviews, job applications, and then once we actually start teaching as well, we'll still be supporting each other. And I'm also going to stay in contact with the college as well. So that's a huge thing. Just focus on building relationships, because that's what you'll have once the degree is over.
Yeah, I don't mind following on from that. Absolutely, Mairead, I 100% agree. At the end of the day, student success isn't just about academic success or how good your grades are. There's your own personal development, your own growth, maturity and things like that. So 100%. Another thing and I have given this advice to my younger sister who followed on to UL a few years after me, and even just local young people around my area. This is your home for 4 years. Get familiar with it. Personally, I can only speak on behalf of UL, but UL have some fantastic resources and amenities and facilities for their students. And I, as an undergraduate, definitely did not appreciate them enough. It's only in my postgraduate capacity that I'm kind of like, that would have been really helpful to me as a student. For example, we had academic advisors, and if I had to have gone and maybe express some concern to my academic advisor, or just for a little bit of a pep talk or just some encouragement or a little bit of direction, my experience could have been very different. Or like that, there's medical facilities, counselling, chaplaincy, a myriad of resources available to students. And I think in your early days as a first year, you're getting a lot of information thrown at you, not only as the different modules that you're going to have, the different lecturers and educators that you're going to have to see. You're in a sea of students that you don't know. It is so daunting. So sometimes those kind of, from a facility point of view and what's around you, are kind of the lesser of the important knowledge that you soak in. But those things are really, really important, because I think once you have kind of a firm base and you know what's available to you, you'll never be stuck, and there is someone in your corner no matter what building you step into, and there is someone that will help you and guide you, even if it's UL's the first 7 weeks. If you're lost, they're there. If you're sick, there's a doctor or a nurse on campus. It's your home for expected 4 years, so really make it your home. And like that, you have your friends and your connections, be it on a personal friendly level or on a professional academic level, and so on, and just enjoy it. And also, there's kind of, people often say your grades in first year don't matter because they don't go towards your final QCA. That's a lie. Bear that in mind for your co-op. Your first year grades will be looked at, so just bear that in mind as well.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Chloe.
I think for me, when I started in college, and even still, I would be quite a nervous person, and I was constantly asking questions in my head, but never asking them out loud to anyone. I think that would be the one thing that I would always say to people starting out in higher education would be, there's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a stupid question, whether it's asking somebody what the bus is outside and where it will take you to, what is an access office, or what is a class rep? Why do they want me to run for this? What does that do? Ask everything. And I found when I went and did my master's in a different place that I kind of took it as an opportunity to ask all the questions I never asked as an undergrad. And that was something that was really beneficial. And I found I got on an awful lot better in terms of not feeling quite so nervous then. And that's just something that, really leads to having a well-rounded experience, is ask questions, and that leads to you getting involved in things. And that was something that really benefited me. And it's the simplest thing in the world, saying, ask questions, but it really does make a difference, because there will be somebody there who knows the answer to everything. And there are, so many different things you could be faced with as a student. As we said, there's such a diversity of students, and they may need very different things. And sometimes it is as easy as finding out from somebody who knows.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I agree completely with Chloe, Mairead and Niamh. I suppose one simple piece of advice I'd give with regards to teaching and learning is talk to your lecturer. They are people, they want to learn, they want to hear your input. So just talk to your lecturers, get involved, become a class rep, go into National Student Engagement Programme, any opportunities just to get involved in the teaching and learning process, and you'll reap the benefits yourself. Simple advice.
Thanks, Dylan. So I see that Marie Parker Jenkins has her hand up, which is a perfect segue. I was going to open the floor to questions. So Marie, do you have a question you'd like to ask the student? I think are you on mute? Sorry, Marie, we can't hear you. You might want to try maybe leaving and coming back. That might sometimes solves the issue. So is it Chris McInerney? You have a question?
Yeah, how are you doing? Thank you for your contribution. Just find it fascinating, and you know, I'm learning stuff, planning modules for next semester already. And think I must do that, I must do that. My question really is a bigger question. So we're in the situation now where we're all talking about in the post-COVID era, we're all going to learn, we're going to develop a whole new society. You know, and we've heard that before after the recession in 2010. I'm wondering, in terms of our teaching and learning, and particularly content, if we were to try to deliver this post-COVID, not quite utopia, but this more ideal, more informed, more empathetic post-COVID, is there anything you think we should be putting on modules, or particular modules, or things that we should be teaching or including, so that we as a university can help move us, or higher education institutions can help move us in this more empathetic, more kind of you know, caring society post-COVID? I'm sorry, it's a big, broad question. I don't have the answers. I don't have any of the answers to it, but you know, I'm fairly sure some of you might. And thank you for your contributions. They're fascinating, really good.
I might come in on that one if that's okay.
Go ahead, Chloe.
Yeah, so thank you for your question, Chris. I think one of the things that I've learned particularly, and the others may disagree or have entirely different input, but certainly for me, one of the things that I think we could carry forward is to not leave everything that we've learned behind, that this new, you know, utopian form of higher education could benefit from a lot of the things that we perhaps found difficult during COVID, such as, you know, movement to online and everything. But I think for a lot of students, particularly with, you know, accessibility needs, it's really opened up the ability to engage further with their education. And I think, you know, as much as we try to build campuses which are completely accessible and everything, we never quite know how many, you know, needs students may have. And I think that there's a certain sense of a little bit of fear and trepidation about going back to, you know, in-person learning. That I was speaking to a mature student recently who is also part of the student assembly, and, you know, she is a mature student. She's in her late 20s, and she has children and everything. And she mentioned that, you know, it was obviously quite difficult doing everything online because post, you know, Christmas, her kids were at home with her too. So being able to engage online was hard, but it was certainly easier than having to, you know, get to on campus. So I think going forward, it might be worth looking at how we can do some kind of, not mixture of the two. Certainly, I don't know the kind of arguments being made for blended learning, but I think certainly that now that we've learned how to do this, we shouldn't just throw it away once we don't need it anymore, because there may always be somebody who needs it. That we need to think really, you know, innovatively, sorry, I can never say that word, about how we can take the really good bits that have really benefited people and not get rid of those in future.
Thanks, Chloe. Will we go on to the next question? Is that okay? Noreen Harity, you have your hand raised.
Oh, great. Thanks, Anna. And thanks, everyone. It was really lovely to listen to you all and to hear some of your views and perspectives. And I can see a lot of what you said echoed in my own students over the last couple of years. Chloe has kind of half answered my question, I think. But the question I'm really interested in to know is, what one thing would you retain from the past 14 months going in, so that for all of us going into the classroom, what should we keep that you found particularly helpful?
I might jump in on that one if that's okay. One thing I found really beneficial was the recorded lectures, where you could go back, rewatch things, slow things down, like pause something. So I think if that could be retained, maybe live lectures could be recorded and then you could go and watch them back. Because that's something that definitely helped me, because sometimes when a module is very content heavy, you know, you'd forget what was said 5 minutes ago, but it's actually really beneficial to be able to work with it at your own pace. So that could be something that could be kept in the future. I don't know, does anyone else have any other ideas?
Yeah, I gotta jump there, Mary. Thank you. I completely agree with you there. I think one thing that's really stood out during the last year is the notion of assessment. that we've moved, that I've heard from through the student assembly, that we've moved away from this horrific reliance on end of year 100% exams, and we've gone to a more continuously based formative assessment, so formative summative assessment per se. So that should be definitely kept, because we had this conversation at the assembly between the 39, 40 students, and I don't think anyone opposed moving towards a formative way. So the assessment thing for me would be definitely one thing that should be kept.
Great, thanks very much. I think that echoes a lot of what my own students have been saying. I think they appreciate the narrated content to review in their own time. I'm not sure they slow them down. I suspect they speed them up actually in my case, but thanks very much.
Thanks, Nora. Gianna Tomasa.
Hi, really interesting presentation, really enjoyed all of the talk. And I just wanted to comment on that last question, and Maria, you saying about the recorded elements. And, and I was just looking recently into some of the American models, and it's called high flex learning. And this is where lectures are not only streamed live, they're also recorded, they're synchronous and asynchronous at the same time. And so what it does is it creates the most accessible learning environment. Of course, there are issues with GDPR and all these kind of things where lecturers maybe don't want to be performing their lectures live. It doesn't really suit all academics, I don't think. So on this argument, I think there's two sides, isn't there, where, sometimes these technologies don't suit all academics. But I just thought I would raise that it may suit some institutions and some departments, the high flex model, which basically means that your lecture is filmed while you're giving it. It's also recorded, so students can stay at home and watch it live, students can watch it recorded, and also you have the lecture where students come in all at the same time. So that's just maybe something to think about in this utopic way that we're going forward. And yeah, I just think the student voice is so important in the next year or so as this whole landscape changes massively. So thanks.
Would anybody like to comment on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had anyways, whether it's up to institutions themselves to decide if they want to adopt it or individual academics. But yeah, there's huge potential. And yeah, even in terms of accessibility as well, if someone can't afford rent in an expensive city, they should be able to access education just as much as someone who can afford it. So yeah, there's huge potential there in terms of accessibility. Thank you.
Right. It looks like we have 1 minute remaining, and Nora Burns, you have a question. I think we'll take that as our final question.
Hi there. Thank you all for great presentations, and it's been really helpful to hear the student voice. I suppose I just had two quick questions. In UL at the moment, there's discussion about, say, maybe the potential over-assessment of students during the COVID pandemic with the move to continuous assessment. And I just wondered what your own thoughts were on that. And then, say, my second question would be just a quick question on, say, and I completely agree with the need to have more flexibility between online and in person, but would you think maybe there's a place for the lecture where you're kind of giving substantive content across to the class, that being kind of a pre-recorded session online, and then maybe having tutorials be a live session on campus? So those are just my two quick questions. Thank you.
I can jump in for the assessment question since I raised that up before. I'd completely agree with you, Nora, around the over-assessment. I think what happened was lecturers, including the modules I teach on, we panicked and we gave out assessment like no tomorrow. But we can reflect on that and get the student voice again and ask them. And I think once we start asking the students how they want to be assessed, it will become this continuous assessment, more of a formative manner. There doesn't need to be a grade attached to every piece of assessment. But I think that could be a way of going forward. I'm still finding it hard to find a student that will advocate for 100% final year assessments. So there is a lesson to be learned there. With regards to your second question, I completely agree, and that's the structure I'd be advocating for as a student.
Absolutely, I can agree with you, Dylan, and especially I know you, Nora, and Joe, like the structure of the law school, and as a law student, it was quite common that we would have a lot of 100% end of term exams, or maybe 90% end of term exams, and they're typically essays and very heavy material to cover over the duration of the exam, and it is an extremely daunting experience. Now, I do agree with Dylan there and yourself that there has been a huge over-assessment of students over the last couple of years, or sorry, excuse me, over the last couple of months, the past 14 months or so. But I think there definitely has been an improvement in the last semester, more so than maybe the previous semester, where it was emergency remote learning and there was a bit of a panic and boxes needed to be ticked, learning objectives needed to be met and satisfied, and just to ensure the course content was covered and that students had a grade at the end of the module. So as I said, it's definitely something we can reflect on. We have made improvements, I feel, this semester anyway. And again, we'll only learn from those this semester and learn to build a better designed curriculum to, I suppose, even out the continuous assessment, the amount of assessments for students, because at the end of the day they have 5 modules. So if they're being over-assessed in one module, Joe, it can be safe to say that I'm sure other modules are quite assessment heavy as well. But again, as we mentioned so far, to bring students to the table and discuss their timeline, how many assessments they're going to have over the course of the semester throughout all their modules, and make sure that students aren't having 4 or 5 assessments all due the 1 week, and again, bringing that kind of empathy and the overload of work on students, and make a discussion and collaboration between students and educators, and make sure that everyone is involved in designing the module and how they will be assessed.
Niamh, thank you. And just taking on some of your words, bringing the students to the table. Thank you for coming to this table and taking the time for us to hear your work with the National Forum, your experience as students, but also such great suggestions to future students and how we as educators can work with you. I think that this was a really fruitful conversation, and thank you so much for giving your time and being here. I'm sure Mary and Martin, my co-chairs of this event, concur my thanks to you as well. Here's Mary. Thanks.
Absolutely fantastic session. Was never in any doubt that it would be anything but a positive session. And thank you all for all that you do for the National Forum, but more importantly for us in our work as teachers and obviously learners as well, because Chloe's point there, the teachers and the learners need to be at the same table. And I think that's one thing I've certainly noticed over the course of the pandemic, is that has happened, and it's happened really effectively. So thank you all very much. Martin, did you want to add anything there?
No, again, I really enjoyed listening, and there was so much overlap between what Helen was saying this morning and some of the issues that have come up and some of the comments, and I'm just trying to maybe capture some of those for my own thoughts a little later on. But yeah, it's just lovely to listen. And something what really struck me is very strong with this whole focus on relationships. And I think, Mairead, you mentioned that, and really for me that's the key to learning, but we'll come back to that maybe later on.
That's great. So Chloe, Mairead, Niamh, and Dylan, thank you so much for being on the student plenary session. And like Mary said, you're more than welcome to continue to join us till the end of the day. And if not, we wish you all the best and good luck and congratulations for all your achievements and future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks very much.